chat room while we're waiting for some others to join in and get connected. So if you want to go ahead, I just put some directions in the chat room that you can take a moment to introduce yourself, where you're from, what your role is currently in education, and maybe one thing you hope to learn tonight. And then I'll do a formal introduction as soon as Bill gives me the go-ahead, and we'll get started.
Welcome to those of you that have joined. My name is Bill Thornburg. I'm the Executive Officer of AMTA. And I'd like to thank Gary for doing a second webinar for us over the last couple of weeks. The first one was fun. I got to listen in and hear a bunch of stuff about biology and environmental science. It took me back to when I was in the classroom. You're in good hands tonight. So he's going to ask you lots of questions. Have some fun with it. And Gary, hopefully in the next few minutes, some other people may join in. And I'll monitor my email to see if anyone responds and needs any help. So,
okay, that sounds
but
good.
it is recording. You're the co-host, so you have all the controls you need. And I'm going to mute so you don't hear my kids running around.
Okay, excellent. Well, thanks
All right,
so much.
thank
Appreciate
you.
the introduction. All right, well, good evening, everybody. My name is Gary Aboud, and I'm here tonight from Detroit, Michigan, and I'm an educational consultant, and I work with schools as well as organizations to develop curriculum materials, among other things. And I'm really excited tonight to be sharing with you some opportunities for citizen science and environmental science research project opportunities for students. We'll be talking about the documentary film Inventing Tomorrow. So if you noticed in the chat window, it invites you to go ahead and introduce yourselves, where you're from, and what your current role is in education, and maybe one thing that you hope to learn or take away from tonight. And while you're a chance to kind of get to know who's in the room, we will get started here in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and call up the presentation. Okay. So it looks like you should be able to see the slides that I've got on the screen right now. If that's correct, will you just give me a thumbs up in the camera? Awesome. Okay. So we are ready to go. I'm just gonna move one quick thing here so I can be able to chat and also see everybody as we're doing this. If at any time during our presentation tonight, you want to use the chat window to submit a question, that's totally fine. And then we'll have an opportunity at some point to be able to address those. And that'll kind of serve as our parking lot for tonight. So great to see some introductions. We've got individuals joining us from Texas, from New Jersey, from awesome to have everybody with us. So a good wide range of experience that we seem to have here in the room tonight. And I think that there's going to be something for everybody in here. So one of the projects that I've gotten to work on recently is with the group Inventing Tomorrow. This documentary has given me the opportunity to be an ambassador for their film and their educational resources. We'll be talking about those tonight. And all of the resources that we're going to be sharing tonight are freely available to teachers and classrooms and students everywhere. And I'll show you how to be able to access those online, as well as if you're interested, you'll have an opportunity to order a free copy of the DVD of the film if you're interested to have a hard copy of a DVD to be able to watch it. So tonight we'll be talking about some of the lesson plans and the content that go along with the movie that is available for classrooms to be able to use for teaching purposes. And it's some really great stuff that I think you're going to find very enjoyable. I think your students will really appreciate as well. Before we go any further, I just want to double check. Could I get a thumbs up on the audio? Is everybody able to hear me okay? All right, fantastic. So we'll go ahead. I want to just kind of frame out what we're going to be doing tonight, kind of by starting out a little bit of a connection to the film itself. So as you may know from movies that you've seen in your own life, films have the power to have a big impact on people. They can change minds and they can do a lot to help people understand the world around them. Inventing Tomorrow is one such film that strives to really shed light on global environmental issues. And they do this from the perspective of a group of teenagers from around the world who are looking for science based solutions to environmental issues in their part of the world. So tonight, we're really hoping the film, as well as the discussions that we're going to have tonight, are going to allow you to be able to inspire young people to become aware of more of the connections that are happening in our world with the environmental issues. We want to try to motivate and engage people to look more closely at environmental issues in their community and give teachers a way to empower and embolden students to be able to address these and be part of the solutions as well. Because we know that students are going to be our future, and this is a great way to be able to get them started earlier rather than later. Finally, in this town hall meeting, we want to be able to get some input from all of you, and we're hoping that you'll be able to use the film and the curricular materials that we've developed, get students kind of excited about and involved with citizen science. So hopefully when they see this, they'll be like my own daughter when she watched this film with me and say, I want to do that, and how can I do that? And we'll talk to you about some ways that you can do that as well. So everyone here seems to have a connection in some way or another to a STEM field, whether it be middle school or high school or otherwise. And so one of our goals here is how can you learn science by doing science and allow that to be a creative force for social change and social good. And for being part of the modeling instruction community, you all know that learning science by doing it is one of the underpinnings of why we do the modeling method. And so my background is currently as an educational consultant, started out as a high school chemistry and physics and biology teacher. I taught in Arizona and Michigan, and that was longer time ago than I care to admit. But after many years in the classroom, I moved on to administration and eventually into a consultant role in private practice. But I had training at Arizona State University in the modeling method over a decade ago, and I was totally hooked once I learned about it, and have since gotten trained in both physics and chemistry and had the opportunity to lead several chemistry workshops myself over the years with a colleague and some other folks in Michigan who have been bringing modeling to Michigan. So I can tell you that the stuff you're going to see tonight, I think goes very well with the modeling community and the way that we stand for teaching and learning. So I hope you find some connections there as well. Our agenda for tonight is we're going to introduce the documentary by watching some video clip documentary, so you'll get a chance to see some segments of the actual film and identify some takeaways from that. We'll look at the curricular materials that are there and how you might be able to apply them to different classroom settings. And then finally, I'll share with you some of the free resources that are available so that you can get your students engaging with this stuff, whether it be remote learning or face-to-face learning, either now, over the summer, or even into the fall of next year. So the first thing I want to say is that you're going to notice a lot of connections with public television in this, and that is because PBS is a partner in putting this documentary out there. And so the film is freely available, as well as the curricular resources are freely available, made possible in part by PBS. And so you'll be there as well. And I just want to point that out before we go any farther. We're going to start out with a little discussion, and we're going to kind of ask you to think about your own classroom, your own students, your own area, and we're going to ask you to think about what are the most pressing environmental issues that face your particular local community. So you can think about this from the perspective of yourself as an adult, or maybe what your students might say if they were responding to this. But in your area, could you put in the chat window what you think are the most pressing environmental issues facing your community right now? And we'll take a minute for you to put those in right now. right, so we've got some responses coming in. We see health of the ecosystem in San Francisco Bay Area. We see air quality. We see drastic changes in weather or extreme pivots in weather, polluted waterways, contaminated runoff, heat island effect, ozone action days, localized flooding. Yeah, I was telling you earlier that in Michigan right now, we had a dam that failed in mid-Michigan, and there's a city that's being evacuated right now. So there's a lot of things, that people don't always notice with flooding, whether it can be from, our situation that's going on right now, where we had some heavy days of rain that were related to the failure of this dam. There's a lot of great opportunities that we have to be able to look at issues environmental science-wise in what you've all shared here. So thank you for all of these. Could I ask for a volunteer who'd be willing to expand a little bit more on what they put in the chat window? And you can feel free to just unmute yourself and go ahead to tell us a little bit about why you put what you put in the chat window for the most pressing issue.
Yeah, so San Antonio is a big watershed area. And not only that, but we have aquifers just to our north where we get all of our water. And there has been more and more signs that the waterways are not only being polluted, but the runoff that's going into our aquifer is polluted as well. So there's concern on many levels as to how many contaminants are we putting into the water that we're actually pulling out of the ground itself.
Well, I appreciate you expanding on that. And being from the Great Lakes region myself, I can very much appreciate what you're experiencing in your area, because we see some of those same problems popping up in our area as well. Is there anyone else who'd be interested to share what their pressing issue was? Okay, then what we'll do is we will press on. So we've got some great connections, I think, to the things that you're going to see in the film tonight in terms of air quality, water quality, and other things that you mentioned. So as we move forward, I want to just kind of talk a little bit about the film and what you're going to notice tonight. So this film follows teenage scientists from 4 areas around the world: Indonesia, Hawaii, India, and Mexico. And each one of them is working on either an individual or a group project to propose some kind of innovative solution to fix an environmental issue in their area. And they are all competing in the Intel Science and Engineering Fair. So their projects are very high level, but they were grassroots projects that started in classrooms, started individually. And just as any other teenager might start with an idea, they started with an idea and built it and took it all the way to the Intel Science and Engineering Fair. So they follow each one of their projects all the way from their ideas to presenting it at the science fair, which is a really terrific opportunity for young people to be able to have. So a couple things just so you can know, if you're interested to see the film yourself or to share it with, watch it either together on a video call like we're doing tonight, or to be able to make it available to them to see on their own time, we do have a few different places where you can go to check that out. You can go to the film website, which is inventingtomorrowmovie.com, and that's probably the easiest place to get to find out where to watch it, as well as to access the educational resources. But you can also see it on the PBS website. So if you go to pbs.org, you'll be able to search for it there. And then we do have an American Documentary webpage where it's also available for you to be able to view on demand. So it does from time to time get re-aired on PBS networks. So you will sometimes find it on a channel that's near you. But if you want to watch it on demand, all these are options. But our newest option is that it's on Amazon Prime Video. So you can watch it on demand there. And so could your students potentially. And if you're interested in a DVD copy, we'll talk to you about how to get that later. And then the curricular materials that you're going to see tonight, the lesson plans that go with each of the projects that the students in the film did, are all available for free on PBS Learning Media. So you can go there and be able to find the Inventing Tomorrow curriculum, or as I mentioned earlier, the Tomorrow website, you'll see a link to the educational toolkits, and that'll take you to all the lessons there as well. So with that, I do want to come back to the idea of if you're interested in a free copy of the DVD, you can take down this web address, and I will put a link to these slides in the chat window to be able to use these links later on. But if you'd like to order a copy of the DVD, or if you have a student who could benefit from having a copy of the DVD rather than watching it online, that's something that you could do as well. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the lesson plans that are available, and I think you're going to find some great connections, as I mentioned, to some of the issues that you're facing in your areas. Again, if you have any questions that come up, feel free to type them right into the chat window, and we'll dive right in. So the first lesson plan that goes along with the film deals with pollution. This lesson comes from following the one of the stories of a student in Hilo, Hawaii, who's doing research on arsenic contamination in the soil in his neighborhood. And so this is kind of a screenshot of what you would see if you found the learning resources on PBS Learning Media. Here's where you'd be able to see a clip from the show, a clip from the movie that goes along with this lesson. The lesson plans and everything that you can access is all right here. We'll actually take a look in just a moment at the clip that goes with this project. But what this student was doing was figure out how can soil be used as a filter. And so the lesson plan that we've developed allows students to be able to do just that, is to explore how soil can do filtration. And so in doing so, they can have an opportunity to investigate soil and potential soil contamination in their own backyards, literally and figuratively in their area. So this part of the film follows Jared Goodwin, and his project is studying the contamination of a local pond in Hilo, Hawaii, where arsenic contamination happened for decades. And part of it was because of a runoff from industrial runoff into a body of water in the area, and a tsunami came by and displaced all of that arsenic contaminated water across the land. And as it filtrated into the soil became contaminated with that same arsenic. And so you'll see in just a moment a little bit about what his project is doing. So we'll go ahead and check out this clip. Afterwards, we'll have a little discussion about this. So if you want to just kind of take in things that you might notice or wonder about Jared's project. Here we go.
Congrats, Doug.
Thank you.
When are you leaving?
14.
So what is your project on?
You know what arsenic is?
Yeah.
So there was like this factory that produced like dry board, but they actually put like arsenic into the pond, but they released it over time.
Oh, that's mad.
Yeah. So then what happened is the tsunami came, and then they dumped everything from the pond onto the soil.
Oh, that's critical. You better stop fishing over there.
Yeah, I mean, you can eat the fish, but it's like it'll just build up in you over time. You can't get rid of it.
Oh.
Just like, you know, it kind of sucks
Yeah.
in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my mom's here, so cheers, bro.
So that's the third red light you've gone through. I mean, you totally did not stop.
I'm driving under the speed limit. I focused on the road. I didn't see the traffic light. And maybe I should just drive when I'm not so stressed.
Well, you know, if I said, Jared, that I won't drive when I'm stressed, I'll never drive.
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
I'm always under
yeah,
stress.
but it was just something
you can't control things.
I didn't
but when
see
you
it.
get behind the wheel, you need to focus.
Maybe what we should do is just organize these guys a little bit.
So this we know is one set right here. It's sort of like we're setting up like the inundation zone.
I like it.
Well, the thing I want to show first at the science fair, I zoom into this pond, you know, like area 1, area 2, area 3. But then I also have the 1960 tsunami inundation zone. Maybe I should add the 46.
I would add the 46.
Okay, this is good notes.
What I see this as, you're kind of documenting those things, but you know, it's always nice to point out what you kind of don't know, and maybe somebody will be smart enough to figure out how to get through that, right? Maybe it's you.
Should I title like redistribution of arsenic contaminants?
Yeah, I think that's a good. That's
so like, I should
probably a
definitely
good word.
mention redistribution.
Yes,
right?
I think that's a good
definitely-
word. I think that's a good.
Is
that's
that one
a good
word?
It is.
It's a weird word.
Okay, so coming back together, it gives you a little bit of a taste for what's going on in this documentary as it follows these students in their projects. So the soil lesson that we have has these objectives for students to kind of follow Jared's story as sort of a starting point to introduce them to soil filtration. They have an experiment that they can do where the soil will, they'll learn about how soil naturally can filter out impurities from things like Jared experienced with a natural disaster. So this helps students to learn what comprises healthy soil, analyze different models that would successfully filter soil that had contaminants in it, and then they'll be able to conduct an experiment that will help them to understand soil filtration and be able to also research different models for restoring soil that's been contaminated in one way or another. And whether or not somebody knows that they live in an area with contaminated soil, this is a type of experiment that can be done in a classroom or in a home setting. So I think that this is one that particularly lends itself well to the remote learning environment. So as you're thinking about lesson plans for now or later, this is what I definitely kind of tuck away under the distance learning because it's got a lot of potential for that. But before I go on to the next one, I want to pause here and get some reactions. Like, what were some things that you noticed or wondered about the clip seeing Jared's soil research? And what I'd like to do is invite some shares from individuals. And I'm just going to kind of go as the order of faces on my screen goes and invite Sarah, if you wouldn't mind. What's something that you noticed or wondered as you saw Jared's project taking fold?
I like the end. He said he was talking with the professor, and they talked about highlighting something he doesn't know because there might be ideas from someone else. So I think that's important when kids are doing science fair or whatnot, that they don't have to have all the answers. It might spur someone else either to run with it or to give feedback, and they can grow on that.
Awesome, appreciate that. And I think it's a really interesting thing to be able to show students is that they don't have to be the one in doing a big project like this, that scientists contribute some of the information to, and that collectively we work together in the fields of science to be able to arrive at solutions. It's not all on one person's shoulder. So thank you for that. Any other thoughts right away that come to mind before we look at our second focus for environmental issues? Okay, then let's go ahead and take a look at a project that deals with air quality that I think you will also find really fascinating. So this is going to be following a group of teenagers from Mexico who are investigating the air quality in their area and coming up with a really innovative solution to be able to purify certain contaminants out of the air. So what you're going to see in this innovative approach to air quality is 3 students, Fernando, Jesus, and Jose, who live in a very populated city in Mexico. It's called Monterrey. And after a long time that they've been on public transportation, they noticed that the transportation contributes to the air quality in their area, and they decided to try to address that issue with a really novel solution. So you'll see what that's a little bit about in a moment. So again, we're going to go clip, think about what you notice and wonder, and we'll invite somebody to share after about that.
Hay que prepararnos para dar la presentación en inglés.
Ajá.
How are you?
Está difícil, pero bueno. We are fine. Ahí en la preparatoria, cuando tomamos el camión, nosotros vemos que ¡pum!, te dan el flechazo de smog, de diésel quemado.
En Monterrey hay muchos problemas con la contaminación del aire, pero otra de las cosas que más me marcó fue cuando uno de mis tíos murió a causa de una enfermedad respiratoria.
Monterrey es una de las ciudades con más industrias en México. Hay demasiada actividad industrial y pues simplemente no se puede parar. Lo que nosotros buscamos resolver fue el decrecimiento de contaminantes más fuertes que hay en el aire. ¿A quién son?
Se regulan un poco, más o menos unos 30.
Nuestra hipótesis fue que por medio de una pintura fotocatalítica se pudieran decrecimiento de los dos contaminantes, NO2 y SO2. ¿Con esto?
Bueno, dióxido de titanio se utiliza normalmente en las pinturas,
Ya, eso.
pero nosotros le agregamos estas propiedades fotocatalíticas.
Cuando está en contacto con el sol, los contaminantes se transforman en productos inocuos.
De probar nuestra pintura, nos dimos cuenta de que daba una capa de en el agua.
Cuando llueve se pueden ir, esa película que se forma, cae en el suelo y las plantas las utilizan como nutrientes. Es un ciclo.
Es algo equivalente a sembrar árboles. Vamos a sembrar árboles para eliminar un contaminante que es el CO2. Bueno, pues vamos a pintar muchas casas para que actúen también como arbolitos que están eliminando la contaminación.
Exacto, si no podemos detener las actividades industriales, al menos podemos dar alternativas para poder ayudar al ambiente.
¿Sabes lo que quiero decir? Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? ¿Cómo se pronuncia esto? How do you pronounce this? How do you pronounce this?
Creo que la competencia haría un gran cambio en nuestras vidas. Nos daríamos cuenta de que algo que nosotros comenzamos con muy poco podría llegar a reconocerse. Ahí estamos haciendo algo bien.
En las Olimpiadas dan todo su esfuerzo para representar a nuestro país. Yo también quiero representar a mi país, pero mi categoría sería la ciencia.
Okay, so we'll kind of come back together here after that. And I found that part of the film to be one of the most fascinating things I think I've ever seen as far as innovation is concerned. The idea of using a paint that has the ability to essentially bring pollutants out of the air and turn them to something that can then be used by plants in the soil. It just sounded so fascinating. So as you can see, this objective for this lesson is going to explore air quality. And so the way that students will do that in this lesson is for them to be able to explore the methods that scientists are using to clean up air pollution. So they'll investigate a few different things, and they'll be researching air quality and identifying both visible and invisible air pollutants to learn how those can kind of correlate with air quality as well as how they can impact climate change. And so students, as they do this, will see the students that you just saw here, Jesus, Fernando, and Jose. You'll be able to learn about their story as a point of inspiration for how they might approach air quality. And so each of these students lives in a very populated area of Mexico, and they haven't been out of the country. So you get to the research side of their projects in the film, but you also get a little bit of the human interest side of the story, which I think is really great for young people to see other young people going through this experience just as they would. They aren't perfect, they're still teenagers like everybody else. So the big ideas here are to help students of air pollution, to investigate different items that they might find in household everyday life and how those contribute to air quality, and then also to be able to analyze real-time data using a global index. And then finally, the hope with this lesson is that they'll draw conclusions on how air quality affects human health and as well as biodiversity. So I want to pause there, and I'd like to invite Pamela, if I could, to share some reactions to this segment of the film.
First off, I was really impressed with their ability to jump in and even have to present it in a different language, in the way that they were practicing the English. And I thought, just from the cultural aspect, I really liked the socio-scientific aspect in the bringing the culture in too. I was amazed that they had the ability to go work with the university and the collaboration. I wanted to know more about how did that system get set up so that they could do that collaboration. I found that really interesting. I've been to Monterrey. It's been 30 years since I've been there, so I know how polluted that is. And so it was just, it's fascinating for me. I enjoyed that clip.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that. And what are the chances that I would invite a person who's been to the actual city of this clip to be able to share the reactions to this clip? That's terrific. Good point that you'll notice that each of these projects has a mentorship at a higher education level. And that's certainly by no coincidence at all. There's a design element to that if you're going to compete in this science and engineering fair that Intel puts out there, that you have to have a higher ed kind of mentor as one of your sources of guidance and sort of counsel in doing your project. Now, we know that doesn't happen in everyone's situation, but we do have a teacher in your corner and as an advisor, as well as the opportunities to learn in a classroom setting. And so whether you're competing in this fair or you're just doing your own research out of citizen science interest, or you're trying to learn a little bit about these things to find out if that's something you'd want to explore as a more formal project, we think that there's some great opportunities and jumping off points to inspire students here as well. So we're going to segue into the next portion of our presentation. We'll be looking at two lessons that deal with water quality. And they're from two very different parts of the world, as well as two different perspectives on what the issue is with water quality. So the first one that we're going to be looking at here deals with a group of girls in Indonesia who are following some pollution that they are observing in the ocean waters. And they're looking for ways to be able to reduce or mitigate the effects of industrial pollution they're doing in their hometown. So you'll be seeing this in just a moment. And what's going to be coming up here is that they're doing a project to be able to reduce the pollution that happens as a byproduct of the ore collection oceans there. So it turns out that this city is the second largest source of tin for mining in the world. And so we need that We need that material for our, we need that raw material for our electronics, and it's something that's very important to us. We can't get away from it. But the byproduct of the mining is actually adding, negative consequences to the waters there. And so you'll see these students going on where their normally bright blue ocean waters that they have in their area have now started to turn more of a faded brownish color because of. So we'll take a look at that next, and then we'll invite you to share some things that you notice as afterwards.
Penambangan timah sangat penting untuk perkembangan ekonomi Bangka Belitung. Namun, penambangan timah itu dapat merusak lingkungannya. Pabrik yang legal seperti PT Timah menggunakan kapal isap produksi yang skala besar. Kalau yang ilegal biasanya dilakukan oleh masyarakat skala kecil. Ada kekeruhan, kemudian ada juga logam berat PB2+, yaitu ikan, karang, plankton, semua hampir sudah. Kita tidak akan menyetop pertambangan timah Bangka karena memang timah sangat dibutuhkan oleh dunia. Apalagi dalam elektronik. Kita harus mencari solusi bagaimana caranya menurunkan logam berat akibat penambangan timah. Kita merupakan pengguna timah. Saya sangat berharap mencari jawabannya dengan sains. Maju. Astagfirullahaladzim. Jadi di sini kami punya proyek penelitian. Kita penambangan timah. Rajuk mas nuncap udah diisap kemana maksudnya care atau masang atau tinggal naruh bayi pasang spiral banyak alat-alatnya kan ada alatnya dia pakai pompa pakai mesin pakai pompa mensise tuh om gimana pakai air kan disemprot air tuh kemana naruh? Buangnya? Buang ke laut? Oh, langsung bayi?
Bang, menurut abang, misal kita nambang nih, kelak air atau udah?
Udah pernah keruh, udah pernah lah keruh.
Adek.
Dok, yang isap gimana?
Ini kan isap lagi.
Balisef. Engineering goals membuat prototype yang kecil di filter.
Nanti tinggal pasang doang.
Iya.
Jadi tinggal pakai solar dipasang aja.
Filter bisa digunakan untuk masyarakat dan juga bisa untuk para penambang-penambang yang punya izin tambang yang legal. Makasih ya, Pak.
Oke, ya.
Pasir laut daerah Bangka. Bangka ini mempunyai komponen pasir-pasir di daerah lain. Pertama, silika, kasiterit atau timah, ilmenit, pirit, dan monasit merupakan salah satu yang sangat efektif untuk menyerap logam berat.
Dimasukin pelan-pelan aja, pelan-pelan.
Kami lapiskan pasir tersebut dengan besi magnetit, sehingga kami mendapatkan material yang super paramagnetik. Hipotesis kami yaitu pasir yang kami gunakan itu bisa menyerap logam berat, kemudian bisa untuk filter.
Okay, so we'll come back together here. Some things that you know in a particular clip. So this is a really interesting one, as I mentioned, that I thought was very surprising. And you can even see some of the dialogue, these young ladies and the people who are on the ship doing the actual dredging and doing the actual mining. And that dialogue plays, I think, heavily into what you understand about the seriousness of this problem. But this lesson that we'll talk about in a moment, is one part of the water quality issue that is explored in this film. So could I ask for a volunteer who'd be willing to share with us their takeaways or some things that they noticed in this clip from the film? And could I invite, is it Navid or Navid?
Navid.
Navid, my apologies.
No worries. Yeah, I thought it was interesting how some members of that community, there's different views, and sometimes students think that there's only one way to think about how something works. So I think it's interesting to include it's interesting to survey members of a community and then really assess, well, what's going on, and then using science to back up a certain argument.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. It's a really important piece too, to be able to offer that there isn't necessarily one way to have a perspective on these things. And that's part of the research process, right? That you, as you mentioned, you do want to get input from a variety of sources, and you do want to read in the literature what are the different ways this problem has been explored already and what solutions have been tried. But that's one of the interesting things that I think doing citizen science or doing authentic project-based learning can provide students, is that opportunity to gain experience with multiple perspectives and how you would look at those things. So I appreciate that input. So this lesson, students are going to be able to learn a little bit about the tin mining issue through the story that these girls in Indonesia have. And they'll use that as a starting point to help recognize the role in this problem of lead pollution in Indonesian waters because of mining, and how that use of the metal tin in electronics contributes to the problem. They'll also have a chance to be able to figure out what's a way to explain how the mining works and how they might create an experiment that models the extraction. So this is an opportunity for them not necessarily to have to be near waters to do this sort of work, but to also be able to model it. And that's a really important piece as well in this one. And finally, being able to research different types of mining and how those impact both on land and in the ocean, the effects on their environment, as well as contrast and compare different methods that there are for mining and the byproducts that they might have on the environment. So the last one that we're going to be looking at in just a moment is another one that deals with with water quality. And this will be our final clip for tonight. And it's also the fourth lesson plan that we have available on PBS Learning Media for you to be able to consider using with your students. And this one follows a young lady in India who's also exploring what's going on with water pollution in the area, but for a very different reason than what you see in India. This in a moment. And I do want to thank Jeff for putting some great comments in about the air pollution. And you're asking absolutely the right types of questions. And I think just to quickly respond before we go farther in, that questions about the air pollution are the exact types of things that we would want to teach students to be looking out for in doing research on such a topic. And so when we do have the opportunity to engage our students in these sorts of research endeavors, or to even just learn about them, it's a great teachable moment to be able to help them learn about the different questions to ask and the things to be noticing and looking for. So let's take a look at this final clip from the film, and then we'll come back together afterwards to get someone's thoughts. So you're going to see here that this particular young lady is going to be looking at freshwater bodies, like inland bodies of water near her area in Bangalore, India. And her name is Sahidi, and she's a local activist on a little bit bigger scale than some of the other students because her project is a little further along, and you see her documented in the film, than some of the other students' projects. So you'll be able to see kind of having, not just by doing her project for the science fair, but how she's already using it to raise awareness of the issue in her area. So we'll take a look at that.
We have been continuing doing water testing every week. We actually have some samples waiting in the lab as soon as we're done with this. But one significant thing that happened was, as a lot of you know, Bellandur Lake caught fire again. It actually caught fire twice over February and March. And a bunch of us, 3 of us, were part of the protest that happened there. And we actually had several news channels approach us and ask us for our data because we had them in the entire city. I started more on the activism side, but I found it really hard to get the kind of data I needed regarding what pollution exactly is happening, which is why I got into science. Oh, you broke the beaker?
No, it
was cracked already.
Yeah.
Before ISAF, I've had to cram a lot of research into very little time. For me, ISAF is just the beginning. I know that would be a great motivator to make sure I was growing my project. So I wanted to mainly achieve 2 things. One is make water testing easy, and 2, make the results accessible to people and easy to analyze. So it uses electronic sensors and chemical test strips to let you test several parameters of a lake sample. Here I have some water from Devar Bisnalli Lake. So I put the probe in the water, and all the values from the probe will be sent via Bluetooth. Okay, so now there's the chemical test strips. You can see the strip has changed color. So you can use the color recognition. Once I've also done the testing with the chemical test strips, all the data will be on a single form, and that will be sent to the cloud platform. There I've enabled various visualizations. Even for a layman, they can see, for example, visualizations that let you see how a lake has changed over time, see how 2 different lakes compare. Anyone in the world can view it. Greetings! How are you doing?
Hi.
No, I don't do hugs.
Oh, that's so bad.
We can do an arm grasp thing.
Hi. Hello, auntie.
Hi,
how are you? I'm good.
Mm.
Why are you doing that?
Because it echoes. Echo.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Echo. You ever throw a rock in and make foam holes?
No.
Can I?
Why would you do that? Whoa.
Yes, we have completely lost our way here.
The lake closest to my house. Even that one lake to revive it would be such a huge task. But it's a place I really love.
It's such a relief to come back in.
Yeah, I know, but then because we live here, it's like we're bubbled, you know, we don't realize what's going on outside. I mean, it's our own sewage that goes, right?
Right.
Okay, so we'll come back together here. So in exploring the water issue in her own town, Sahidi, as she mentioned in that clip, developed her own testing kit and her own app that allows individuals to be able to plug into a global database and upload their own sampling data that they've done in their area as a way to crowdsource water quality information for public use as well as for citizen science efforts like hers, which is activism. Her story is probably the most advanced out of all the students that are documented in this film. And if you see the film in its entirety, you kind of get to see where her prize is in the end, and it's really interesting. But the lesson that we've developed around this particular water quality helps students to focus in a little bit more on the design and engineering process along with the scientific method to be able to address those environmental problems. So it's about exploring the importance of STEM in everyday life and in someone's particular area. So we get to help students be able to identify might have in a solution. As she mentioned, you can't clean up that whole lake. It's too big of a project. So what she decided to do was focus in on how do we collect better data. And so this also would allow students to be able to select a solution and write out outline a plan for solution design. And in proposing solutions, students do a lot to research a particular problem that deals with water quality that might be in their area or something that they may be related to or connected to in some other way. So let me pause there, and if I could invite Sean, if you're able to unmute and join us to share your reactions to this clip. And then after that, we'll bring it all together with the resources that go along.
Sure. I thought, and it's more a note of that on all of the clips in general, not just on this particular clip. Just something I've taken away from all of them is that the students, when they're working on a problem, aren't necessarily solving a major problem. It's all industrial problems, and none of them are going into this thing, oh, we need to change like the way we run industry. Like, it's all about trying to come up with ways to mitigate or to think that's important for some of the students to just realize you don't have to take a giant bite out of this. You can do small steps, you can do smaller things, little bits at a time to try to change, make a larger change. You're doing a series of smaller steps.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think that does sometimes get lost in general conversation about research and project-based learning is sometimes students can come away with the misconception that it's got to be a big change or it's got to be a big solution or they have to tackle the whole thing. And, you know, as you mentioned, being able to create a small win is worthwhile just as much. And that's something that we can teach our students to be able to do as well. So I appreciate that perspective. So in our final kind of things I want to leave you with here, I'm going to ask if you would respond to one of these 4 questions in the chat window. And this will give everybody a chance to have a voice in whichever of these they feel most drawn to. But this is a little bit of a chance to kind of discuss a little further what might be an environmental issue that you think your students would benefit from engaging with. That's one question you might feel pulled to respond to in the chat window. Perhaps you might want to respond to which project from the Inventing Tomorrow film do you think would most click with your students. Perhaps you want to think about your own curriculum. Would you have a place to incorporate one or more of these lessons from Inventing Tomorrow into your classroom? And if so, what would that look like perhaps? I'm sorry. Oops. And then finally, maybe you want to respond to, do any of the students' personal stories in this film relate to your own students? And I know in the area where I live in Detroit, we have a lot of individuals from the Middle East and from India in our city. And so this is one where I think some of those particular stories that students that I would have been teaching here would resonate with Sahidi's story, for example. But if you think that would resonate with your students, why would that be the case? So take a moment to respond in the chat window, question of choice, and then we'll kind of bring this all together afterwards. And Jeff, that's a really good question. Has anyone been wearing safety goggles? I will say that I saw a lot of gloves. I did see lab coats. I did also, which I thought was very interesting. So yeah, I think that's a great one to bring up. But yeah, also I love the questions that you noticed that they were asking, like what if we tried this, and then they were making connections based on observations. So Polly has shared starting a STEM research class next year. So this is a great springboard for students to start thinking about potential projects. That's awesome to hear, and we hope that some of these can be helpful to get your students started, or maybe to inspire them even just by seeing clips from the film or seeing the film all together. Camden's sharing that the lesson about soil is one that would correspond with your chemistry unit. Understanding how chemistry is woven into other fields and a basic understanding of it can help students find value in their everyday lives for it. Appreciate that as well. As a chemistry teacher myself, at heart, that's probably one of my favorite subjects to have studied, a ton of use in everyday life for it. So appreciate these shares, and for those that are still putting those in and sharing them in the chat window, right now I want to just thank you for sharing those reactions as well. I do want to be able to honor everyone's time, and so I'd like to just kind of sum everything up with some key takeaways here, that we are trying to encourage small changes, creating small wins, and starting at the local level. That any student, doesn't matter the situation, has the power to contribute to change that can impact the world, even beginning in their hometown. But ultimately, we hope that this film helps people to appreciate how complex and interconnected everything is in terms of our world and the environment that we live in. And we do hope that this film will kind of highlight some of the STEM methods that both scientists take and that students can take to address and research in terms of sustainable practices. So with that in mind, I do want to invite everybody. It would really help us a lot. So we do these events, we were doing them in person before the last 2 months changed a lot of things. We are now doing many more of these virtually, as you are tonight. And so it would be really helpful to get some of your feedback. So if I could just put in the chat window a link here and ask you to, there's about a 1-minute survey that we'd love to get your feedback from tonight, just to know a little bit about how we could make this event better when we do other virtual town halls to engage with teachers around the country. And so as you get that link called up, you're welcome to finish that up and submit that feedback survey. But I will take just a moment. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to field those now. But I do want to thank you for your participation and just remind you that if you head to inventingtomorrowmovie.com, you'll be able to get all of the resources as well as access to the film there. And I'm going to go ahead and put the link to the slides in the chat window as well for you, so that if you want to research, or I'm sorry, if you want to follow up on any of the things or review any of the things that we talked about tonight, you'll be able to access those as well. So here's the link to that. Okay. Yeah, and thanks for that input, Bill. I think you're right. The environmental injustice is a great topic that could get a lot of thinking sparked in terms of research and things of that nature for that class.
Yeah, especially if you live in, I think it's really easy when you live in a bigger city and one that's very diverse, because then you can get perspective from your students, you know, based on where they live and what they have to deal with. But there's a lot of great topics there. If you live in a rural area, maybe you could just even think about things like agriculture. You know, if you have farmers and farming families in your school.
Absolutely. Well, and Bill, I do want to turn it back over to you. So thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. I'm going to flip it back over to Bill to add any closing comments or remarks and to close us out for the evening.
Yeah, no, Gary, thank you again. I liked watching those videos, you know, and I think it was Pamela that talked about being in Mexico. I was just in Indonesia last year, doing chemistry experiments and working in a lab with people that didn't wear goggles or any safety equipment, no showers, no running water. So it's a very different environment, you know, and just have to be flexible with it. So it's really interesting to see how other people navigate through the world of, you know, science and research when they don't live in a world like we do. So great presentation. I appreciate it. Thanks everyone for coming. If you haven't heard, AMTA as well as other hosts around the country are going to be doing virtual professional development this summer. Check it out on our website, modelinginstruction.org. A little bit of everything, you know, from middle school all the way up to chem, bio, and mechanics. So if you're interested or know any colleagues, tell them to look our way and see what we're offering. Maybe they'll be interested. And if you know anyone that was supposed to come tonight that wasn't able to, I'll send this off to Wendy and she'll get it posted in the next couple days on the member portal of the eWebLife site. So it'll be up there. And if anyone actually, if someone's a non-member and wanted to view it, just send us an email and we'll get it to them somehow so they can watch it. So thank you all. That's it. I don't have anything further. Gary, thanks.
All right. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all, and take care. Be safe and have a good rest of the day.
Absolutely. Have a great night. See you later.
Bye now.